everyone. I thought I'd create a little tutorial on how to do assignment number 3, in which we have you just find a paper related to something that's related to the enzyme alkaline phosphatase from yeast, or the Pho13 gene product, or maybe even something about the gene itself. Just anything about Pho13. I want to walk you through sort of some of the basic ideas of finding and reading a paper. Is I found that, I still remember back whenever I started reading scientific papers, I found it being kind of difficult and kind of mysterious in some respects, and I felt kind of uncomfortable doing it. So I'm going to try to go through and give you a few clues to make it a little bit easier, I hope. So I want you to find and read a scientific paper. I'm going to talk a little about searching for publications. I'll talk a little bit about reading papers, and I'm going to talk about the assignment number 3 in particular. So those are the 3 things we talk about. And there are multiple avenues to search for literature. Traditionally, I've used PubMed because PubMed has been around for a very long time. Ever since I remember I started just searching for papers online and using a web browser. PubMed was there. More recently, Google Scholar has been used, and I probably recommend most of you to go ahead and use Google Scholar, because there'll be a few extra things that'll be there that will be useful. And then you can also find a lot of these papers, UHCL library. If you want, you can go through and search for particular journals and particular articles and things like that. As you're looking for papers, you're going to find a lot of papers are behind paywalls, but I have personally found that University of Houston has access to almost any journal that you would want to be able to find a paper for. And I kind of want you to look at the major kind of journals that the university would have, just to make sure that the paper is worth reading. Reading papers. Whenever you first start reading papers, a lot of times it kind of depends as to what your intention is. But what I will frequently do is I almost always read the abstract. The abstract will kind of tell you a lot about the paper, give you an idea of whether or not it's worth looking into and understanding what you might want to find. I mean, you might be looking for a particular reference that was made by another paper, and from the abstract a lot of times you can find out if it's really kind of a major portion of the paper or not. But I would always recommend read the abstract. And the next thing I always do is I always look at the conclusions, because the conclusions will frequently tell you kind of what the authors were thinking and what the data means to them and that sort of thing. And so go ahead and read the conclusions, and then I look through the figures and the tables and then the respective captions. And from reading those, I'm not sure exactly what they were doing, I will go ahead and then I will read the results section. A lot of authors will put the results of discussion together, but notice that I did not read the paper from beginning to end. Sometimes I'll immediately go to the conclusions to find out. So a lot of times, if you're referenced by another paper, that comment, you'll be able to see that in the conclusion section. And then I'll look through the results sections, look at all the figures to see if that conclusion was justified in my mind, if it fits the information that they have plus the information that I know. And so that's kind of the way I go about reading a paper. I think a lot of other people use very, very similar approaches. Notice that most of us, I didn't mention anything about the materials and methods section. If you're going to reproduce an experiment, that's about the only time that I go to that section. Or if I know that there are certain methods that I know have certain issues or certain problems, I will look up and see if they use a version of the method I'm familiar with. But it's kind of like it's not something you read beginning to end, and you kind of read I read kind of the end of the paper, and then I'll read the results section and look at all the figures and things. A lot of times I won't even look at the introduction at all. Sometimes the introduction can give you an idea of the system they're in and kind of what their biases are and why they may have done the study. Those are the things to look at. So here's the assignment in a couple of points. Use PubMed or Google Scholar. I would probably, if I were you, I'd probably use Google Scholar, because Google Scholar will show you the number of times the article has been cited. And that's kind of a nice thing to know. If it hasn't been cited at all, maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe it's not particularly good or not a well done thing. Most of the journals you're going to find doing searching for FO13, it's going to have an impact factor of greater than 2. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. But first, go ahead and do a search for a primary research article that discusses the Baker's yeast alkaline phosphatase, which is FO13. Go ahead and look that up, and it can be anything. It can be enzyme activity, it can be regulation. I think you'll find there's a lot of alkaline phosphatase papers related to xylose metabolism, I believe. There's a number of things, and those orient towards sort of some biochemical journals and biochemical engineering journals, which might be kind of interesting. But go ahead and read a paper on FO13 to get a little bit more information about it. And just make sure that it's been cited. The key thing here is make sure the article's been cited at least 5 times from Google Scholar. Okay, here's your assignment. I want you to copy and paste a figure, what you feel is the most important or the most interesting figure in the entire paper. I want you to attach a copy of the PDF of the downloaded article. I want you to summarize the overall major findings. What did the paper actually discuss? What did it find? And in the paragraph 2, I want you to go a little bit more detail on what is the most important figure in the paper. It might be a subfigure. It might be like figure 3b or something like that. And look at that, and then look at the materials and methods section, see how it relates to that figure, and then go ahead and talk about how that experiment was done. What do you think any of the positive and the negative controls in the experiment might have been, and what kind of observations they make from that experiment. That's all we really want you to do, and hopefully this little quick introduction to the assignment helps you out. If not, feel free to send me an email or talk to me in the lab. I'll see you later. Bye.